Good morning. My name is Wendell Nicholson. I'm with the Northeast Church of Christ, and it's my privilege to bring to you the Saturday morning devo this morning. This morning I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite subjects, I guess, is the Apostle Paul. And that's found in the book of Acts. And I'm going to begin in verse 8, chapter 8 rather. First, a little background. Starts out with Saul approving the death of Stephen. If you'll remember, Stephen was stoned for his preaching the gospel and his straightforward approach to doing so. And he was stoned to death, and Saul was stood there and was approving, and the coats were laid at his feet. Now, first of all, the Paul-Saul thing. A bit confusing. First time we hear him called Paul is in Acts 13, verse 9, I think, thereabout, where it said Saul, who is also called Paul, and from there on we hear of him as Paul. What's the difference? From what I'm told, Saul was the Jewish name, and Paul was the Gentile name. If you'll remember, Paul became the apostle to the Gentiles, and so he started being called Paul. That makes sense to me. I don't know that that's for sure, but it makes sense. And we know in 8, he's called Saul. And let's just read Acts 8. Says, and Saul approved of Stephen's execution. There arose on that day a great persecution against the church of Jerusalem. They were scattered throughout all region, and devout men, verse 2, buried Stephen and made great lamentations over him. But Saul was ravaging the church, entering house to house. He dragged off men and women, committing them to prison. And then in chapter 9, says, but Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest. He asked for letters to the synagogue at Damascus so that he could if he found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. He went on his way. And we know the story. We're just going to hit it briefly. That on his way, this bright light shone around about him, and he fell, and even the men with him all fell down. He says, and falling to the ground, he heard a loud voice. The men who were traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one. This bright light, Paul got up blind, remember that. And Paul asked him, Saul asked, who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. So he got up from the ground, he went to Damascus. Through God, he was directed to a person named Ananias, who told him what he must do, and he went right then, was baptized into Christ, and he became a follower of Christ. Now then, where we're coming with this is how zealous Saul was to persecute the church. So many people say he had a life-changing thing on the road to Damascus. Yes, he did. I won't disagree with that. But what I want to say is it wasn't that life-changing because he was always zealous for God. He was just zealous in the wrong direction. And on that road to Damascus, the life-changing thing was he learned the right way to be zealous for God. And he still was zealous for God, but he in the right way. You know, there are a lot of people today who are very zealous in what they believe. And yet, they're not. They're wrong in what they believe, and they'll be held accountable for that. People want to believe what they want to believe. People want to believe something that's easier, something that sounds good, something that's more fun, something that I enjoy. In fact, how many times have you heard people say, but I like it this way, or I like to sing in the chorus. I like, whatever it is, they like it that way. And they're willing to exchange what they like for what God wants. Just like Saul. He thought he was doing the right thing by killing these Christians, trying to destroy the way of Christianity because he believed in the law. He still wanted to stay in the law of Moses. He wanted to believe the old things. But Jesus, on that road to Damascus, pointed out to him, showed him the right way to go. He chose that right way. And he was baptized into Christ. He went through, and he was still zealous. In fact, he left right there and started immediately preaching Jesus. And they thought, what's going on here? In fact, he tried to go to Jerusalem, and they wouldn't have him because they were afraid of him. He was zealous for the Lord. And he became zealous in the right way. What I'm trying to say is, we should be zealous for the Lord, but let's make sure we're zealous for the right thing. If you wonder about what you're doing and you need to study, we'll be glad to study with you if we can help you. On our website, northeastchurchofchrist.org, you can find things there to help you study. Or you can give us a call. One of us would be glad to study with you if you have a problem with the right way. But most importantly, choose the Lord. Choose His way over your own. Thanks for listening to this Devo.